Mo, are you going to be good cop or bad cop?
Do we need that, Alistair?
I don't know. Maybe I could be bad cop.
Be a bad cop if you want. I can try and be good cop. I'll do my best. Welcome, Alan. Thank you for joining. Yeah, you are CTO and co-founder at Griffin. We thought maybe we could start a little bit by going into your background and asking first of all, like, why did you decide to, and how did you get into software engineering?
Hmm. Um, Kind of accidentally. I mean, like, going in high school, my parents were like, "Oh, you got to be a doctor or lawyer or engineer," and I just took computer science, AP computer science, which is um, liked it. Then got a small internship uh, in high school, and then kind of decided that was the track for me.
Nice. Forced into it by parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have to do something respectable. But I think the thing that ended up appealing was that I really like, creating and building. No offense, lawyers, but it's closer to a zero-sum game. Whereas,
So
like,
if I,
that's,
so we're thinking, yeah, software engineer, founder, or Lego master, which yeah, maybe one pays more than the other.
yeah.
And then, Alan, I guess one thing that I found really fascinating when I joined Griffin is this is not your first startup. You've co-founded CircleCI. You're wearing the hoodie. How did you end up founding CircleCI?
Well, actually, I take another step back, which is so I got out of school, got the boring enterprise software job, building building little appliances that lived in data centers for tape backup, and just didn't like the decisions that the people above me were making. And I thought I could do a better job. And the time I was reading Paul Graham, and he was saying you should do a startup, and so that was 2008, maybe. So then I tried to do a startup with a good friend of mine, and that was machine learning for tech support, or AI for tech support. So, just almost 2 decades too early.
Yeah,
And then,
I would have done so well today.
you know, so we floundered for, I don't know, almost 2 years, and then gave up on that. And then I still wanted to do startups, so I thought I would do something easy, and that was something that was going to make money quickly. And so with the first startup was called Reasoner. So with Reasoner, we were using GitHub in the cloud and then deploying to AWS in the cloud. And then my CI box was my desktop machine under my desk. I said, this is stupid. Like, cloud, my desk, back to the cloud. It's like, no, it should just go this way. That was the big insight.
Nice. I'm trying to now work out. Okay, at what point in Circle did you think, my bank is really bad? I'm gonna fix that.
No, that was actually mostly David.
Okay. Um. So with Reasoner, like, I guess you tried it once, that didn't work out. What made you want to try again? I guess, to put it bluntly. So
I still didn't want a day job. Like, that was, you know, um, yeah,
yeah, didn't want to work for someone else.
yeah. I guess we're looking for hot takes here, and it was, um, I just didn't think most of the people running company. So most of the company. So this was also in Texas, where there weren't as many. Like, there were no like Silicon Valley startups, run by founders. Like, founder culture wasn't a thing there. And I guess that requires more unpacking. But like with the new like founder mode thing, the big thing about that is the thing that strikes a chord with me is that, like, so if you go watch Brian Chesky's interviews, they're excellent. But the big thing he talks about is that the person in charge should be an expert, and like the whole idea that non-technical people can run software companies is just completely insane. It's we don't allow MBAs to tell doctors what to do. We don't allow MBAs to tell lawyers what to do, but we are going to allow MBAs to tell engineers how to run software companies. Like, no.
Oh,
That's a very fair point.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how the world evolves and then it kind of goes back to like common sense and basics. I'm seeing a theme here of like simplification. Um, what convinced you, Alan, to start your first stuff with David, with Griffin?
Sounds like a good idea. They so I found it at Circle. I really liked doing tech infrastructure. Um, so things like AWS, things like Circle, where um, if you imagine, like, I don't know, a fad, B2C social media or like any of those kind of things, there's like a technology stack, and the closer you are to the bottom of the stack, the more defensible your moat is. It's harder and more expensive to replace. And banks are, the same way. There's like all the, Apple Pay and fintechs. Like there's always a big stack between like some startup with a with a card, and there's a million layers before you get to the bottom at the bank. And then Mark Andreessen's been saying for a while, software's eating the world, and banks are like the last thing to have been eaten by software.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess those kind of like sayings in the software world, like all very applicable, like, move fast, break things, all very applicable to tech companies. And I guess Circle was that, you technically, I mean, I guess you were infrastructure to a lot of companies. So if you broke things there, things are bad. So maybe it was a good kind of like testing the waters for a highly regulated industry. But that must have been quite a big jump going from to banking. How was that move? Like, how have you found that level of regulation?
It really hasn't been that bad. It was more of a language shift in terms of learning how to talk to bankers about risk. All of the tech concepts are the same. Reduce risk, try to make your failures uncorrelated. Operational resilience is just another word for don't have downtime.
Yeah. I guess maybe there's an element there of bringing our world to the banking industry.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What can we do for you, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to test in production, and everyone, what? Yeah. It's like, no, it's fine. It's going to reduce your risk. Like, oh, okay. That sounds great.
Yeah. I guess most recently, at least to my mind, you've been dealing with the backup of the whole bank, multi-cloud, on-prem, that kind of thing. Like, I think that's just a really interesting aspect, because the regulators are saying, or the auditors are saying, oh, what happens if AWS goes down? But I mean, if that does happen, I think everyone's going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Anything we can do. Yeah. So what's that kind of process like behind the scenes?
Well, one thing that's interesting there is I actually don't what the regulators are doing is interesting in that I don't think they're actually trying to reduce the total amount of downtime in the UK financial system. I think they're trying to reduce the correlated failures. So, if you have two options where, like, I don't know, every bank in the UK has, I'm just making the numbers round and easy to reason about. Every bank in the UK has 2 days of downtime a year, or every bank in the UK has 1 day of downtime, but every bank has it on the same day. Like, those are two very different cases, and the regulators would much rather have the former than the latter. So I think that's the main reason they're actually worried about multi-cloud and operational resilience. But the process of moving it's just work. You know, find hardware, find a data center. Our infrastructure as code tool is AWS specific right now, so we got to find something else. And,
That makes a lot of sense.
I guess you've got maybe the Barclays outage is a good recent example of like they had the downtime, but the risk then I guess is that 1 day like hurts a lot of people. Maybe like they're competing on their houses, but that kind of thing. But the fact it continued then 3 days, that's maybe the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Can you recover quickly? Might be more important there than don't have the downtime in the first place.
Yeah.
Because you could probably have done like, I don't know, like you probably could have had 6 hours of downtime and people still could have, if you'd have recovered, you could have been okay.
Depends what time.
Well, yeah. And I guess also I don't actually know, I haven't seen the write-up of what happened there. So
Yeah.
reserve the right.
Zooming out a little bit again, Alan, you're in the States now, but you moved to the UK to set up Griffin with David. What was that like?
A little adventure. I did probably pick the single worst time to do an international move ever. So we raised money in 2019, and one of the conditions of that was that I would move to the UK within. So that was August 2019, and then the term sheet said like within 12 months or something like that. So then December 2019, I apply for my visa, and then you have to pick a date. You have to arrive within a month of the date that you pick. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in Texas. I don't want to move in, August, because you don't want to do heavy labor in August in Texas. So like, okay, May, it's the beginning of the summer. It's not too hot. The weather's good. The weather will be good in London. Sure. So then we ended up moving May 8th, 2020. Heathrow, only Terminal 2 was open. There were something like 10 flights for the entire day in or out of Heathrow. And then, we show up with no furniture and all the stores are closed. So Amazon was a lifesaver.
I was going to say, you must have had the airport to yourself.
Yeah. Like you could have filmed a zombie movie in there. It was crazy.
I guess now you're back in Texas, right? I'm still convinced you did that to ensure at least like 5 hours of coding time a day uninterrupted by the rest of the business.
Yeah. Ironically,
yeah.
It does work well though. I show up in the morning and do Slack and email and video calls until the people in UK time don't want to have video calls, and then uninterrupted coding time.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's definitely been times that I've messaged you at 10 going, okay, I'm stacking up some messages for Alan when he wakes up. Great. It's quite a good forced maker and manager schedule, right? Like, when am I moving? Basically, it's I can't move to Texas though, because then I'll be able to interrupt you during your non-interruptible time.
Yeah.
I'll go the other way. Um, I guess thinking more now about that kind of maker manager schedule. You're probably the most technical CTO I've met. I'm not that I've met loads of CTOs, but like I think it would be safe to say that you are one of the more technical ones.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll take that
That
as a
wasn't meant to
compliment.
be like well done, well done. More like what's your view on how technical a CTO should be? Any
Yeah.
context around that, basically.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So if we think about it from like a strategic perspective, like what is the responsibility of the various execs at any company? So, the chief sales is responsible for making sure we're making sales, and it's like you have a team, they're good at their job and they're producing results. And like it's the same for CTO. Like we're building technology. So then that means, you need to have good people, with good process and good outcomes. And like that's the actual like job description. But then how do you do that? It's like, well, if you're non-technical, how do you know that you're making good hires? How do you know that you are following a good process? How do you know that they're producing good work in a good amount of time? Like, so, I mean, to me, being technical is the only way to do that. Um, because I have to like see with my own eyes, like, yes, this is good code. Okay, look at Git blame. Okay, that person wrote that code. Good job. Or like, so when you see these non-technical managers, it's like, well, they say, oh, well, I can rely on my reports to tell me who the good engineers are. It's like, okay, well that means that your report is in charge. Like as soon as you are not using your own evidence and judgment to decide who's doing a good job, like you're not in charge anymore.
It's a bit like the founder mode conversation again of like being in the
Oh yeah,
details.
absolutely.
And yeah,
Yeah. So that there's a fantastic line that lives rent free in my head. So Brian Chesky poached some high level a guy from Apple and made him head of design. He's like, do you think this guy became head of design because he was a good people manager? Like, no, he was an expert first and the people manager second. And so my hot take is everyone in charge should be an expert first and the people manager second.
Yeah, I think I asked you at one point in the past why don't you just go full like the lead engineer, like the leadest of the lead engineers, um, and let someone else be the CTO? And I think you said to me at the time because then someone else would be trying to tell me what to do, like trying to
Yeah,
tell me that something wasn't possible,
yeah,
uh, and I wouldn't believe them basically. So I was like, yeah, that's fair.
yeah. It's not that I want to be in charge. It's that I don't want other people to tell me what to do. So the easiest way to do that is everyone else tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, but yeah, I guess then speaking of being in charge, you had a few decisions to make right at the beginning of this journey, namely like what programming language do we use? Um, I guess I guess the simple question is why Clojure?
I like it. I mean, there are more justified reasons. But it's a very powerful language in the sense of what you can accomplish in 10 lines or 100 lines. I think in general, you can rank programming languages by um, how much you can accomplish in a fixed amount of code. Because one of the counterintuitive results from studying large software projects is that on average, engineers write the same number of lines of code per day, regardless of programming language. And that, I mean, engineers even will say, what? That's not really true, but like it's pretty close. So then in general, um, picking a more, call it a denser language, actually increases your total productivity. So that's one reason. A second reason is it's nobody's first language, which is actually an upside because there are loads of programmers who just took Java in school and then that's the only thing they know and they're just going to look for Java jobs. And in general, those people are terrible. So everyone who arrived at Clojure knew something else and then said, I'm not satisfied. I want something better. And that mindset is really useful. And that results in dramatically less work to hire engineers because you put out a Java job ad, you're going to get 1,000 CVs and 10 of them are going to be good. You put out a Clojure job ad, you'll get 13 CVs and 10 of them are good. That's the second reason. And then the third is the philosophy behind Clojure actually lines up very well with financial services and how accountants think of the world.
I guess thinking about that second point, you're kind of cutting the hiring pool in a large chunk of it off it, which is actually I think it's used as a reason why you shouldn't use Clojure a lot of the time. Like, the hiring pool is small, but I also think that lean teams are good too. So
Absolutely,
effectively you're leading yourself down that path.
Absolutely. Like the whole we have to be able to hire 100 programmers this year is complete anti-pattern. The goal is to improve business metrics. Like hiring people is almost never going to make the number go up. Well, it's going to make expenses go up. It's not going to make revenue go up. One of the other great on the value of small teams. After Facebook had layoffs in 21 or 22 or something, Zuck wrote a letter, and one of the things that he found counterintuitive was that they laid off a lot of people and shrunk the existing teams, and they found that the newer, smaller teams shipped faster than the existing team. And Zuck's interpretation of that was that they had more focus, and when you have an exec managing 10 different projects, something's going to slow down and something's not going to get attention. But if they have 2 projects or 1 project, it's going to go a lot faster. So yeah, definitely being able to accomplish more with a smaller team is always a win.
Yeah, so that classic. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like, hey, can we add some more engineers to reduce the time? And it's like, no, you'll just add time. Take longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Call me in month.
That's the one with the dinosaurs and the So I guess the next big question or the big decision maybe you had to make, apart from which programming language to use, because obviously that's the most important one. Should we or should we not build our own core banking system? So, the question I've written down is, why on earth did you decide to build it in-house?
I mean, there's as usual, there's the blunt answer and then the second more reasoned answer. And so the blunt answer was, we didn't want to spend $100,000 a year on Mongo or whatever. But the second big reason is, so tech companies are not like it's not magical fairy dust. Like there's a reason why you have to win. And again, it kind of comes back to making your own decisions. Like if you, the reason tech companies move faster than banks is because the tech companies control their tools. So Amazon, Google, Facebook, like it's when they started, it was like, oh, we're gonna build this little microservice thing. And then it turned into we're going to build our own databases and we're going to build our own programming languages. We're going to build our own data centers. We're going to build our own CPUs. And so like they started at the maturity level that they, had the budget for. And then now they've like completely replaced entire like billion-dollar companies that they would have relied on as vendors in the 90s. And banks haven't done that yet because the legacy banks are not technology companies. And when they buy their core banking system, they're no longer in control of their own destiny. So when they say, oh, we've identified this market opportunity, we want to offer this type of bank account to this type of customer, and then your core banking vendor says, oh, that's an interesting idea, we'll put it on the roadmap. Like, you can have it in 3 years, or you can pay us $1 million to do it now. Like, no. So one of the fundamental conceits behind Griffin is that we are going to own those tools, and that lets us create solutions that no one else can do. So things like, yeah, we can support 1 million bank accounts, and yeah, we can do onboarding, and we can, share our transaction monitoring results with our customers. And to be clear, fintechs, not individual.
Important clarification there.
Yeah.
We don't tip off.
No, that's really interesting, and I guess apart from just the core banking system, like we've made a number of build versus buy decisions over the course of Griffin, and I just wondered, like, what's your perception of those decisions? Like when we have to make them, what goes into it, and maybe how has your perception of those changed given some of the choices we've made and how they've panned out?
I'm mostly pretty happy with it. It's so I guess for context, we've gone build 80 or 90% of the time, and it's usually painful. It usually takes longer than we thought, but it's also usually had a better outcome because we've regretted all of the buys that we've done, and we're looking at replacing all of them. So there's always this like short-term versus long-term pain thing. And I don't know, maybe, yeah, you could make the case that every buy has allowed us the time, it's like, oh, okay, you bought that, and yes, it sucked, and you're going to replace it in 2 years, but the choice is, build it now or build it in 2 years. But even then, like, they still cause like problems. So no, I really don't regret it much.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, one of the most recent decisions we made to build was the case management system, and I mean, blowing my own trumpet, but I think that's been a resounding success over the buy. But then, we come to sort of the other side. So I think you being very technical and the founder does add some weight to, say, decisions like feed DB, which is where I'm going next. Because like if say I don't know, someone on team, maybe just like a senior engineer, said, hey, I want to roll my own kind of data script port on top of Foundation DB, I'd be like, no, go away, because you may just leave and then we're left with it. Whereas I guess you don't have that. The risk is lower, right? So yeah, talk to me about FeetDB and how that came about.
Um, yeah. So I guess that is what we take a further step back. We started the system on Kafka, and the lead engineer at the time convinced me that we could build a event sourcing database like system using only Kafka, like with no Postgres, no nothing. And I would say so that was a big technical mistake that I signed off on. And so the system kind of works, but it was very clunky. It was very slow. It had just unfixable performance characteristics, and no, the database, query story was not good enough. So then we moved to Foundation DB, which is awesome, and I cannot say enough good things about it. Like, it's just a great technology. But the one problem with it is it's a key value store only. So it's serializable, it's fast, it's resilient, but the query story is not good enough. And we're a Clojure shop. We knew about Datomic. We've always been happy with, always liked the API. But we didn't think it could get to our scale needs. So there's DataScript. It's an open source project. It's an open source reimplementation of the Datomic API, but it's designed for in browsers. Right. Took that and ported it to Foundation. And so now we have this Datomic-alike thing. And I think it's great. Speaking for myself, but of course, I wrote it. And yeah, that is one of those, like, you're right about the example of like, oh, this engineer wants to do that, and are they allowed to? That is a very tricky problem. I don't have a good answer for it yet, because I would say almost all of my career successes, both as an employee in my first day job, and then even now, have been doing just going up and doing things. And there's a very tricky balance of if you do that, you better be right. Because, if you go off and do things and they don't work out, then like you're getting fired. And then, so it's like, what percentage of the time should you let engineers go off and do that? And what does their success rate have to be? And,
Yeah. It's a good question, and it's very hard to put down to concrete numbers as well. It's like, if you're always successful, then do whatever you want, basically. Like, if I know in advance that you're gonna, halve double our SDP because you're doing something I didn't tell you to do, like, great. But if you spend a month doing something that wasn't the pitch, then it's gonna make me sad.
I guess it ties to build as well. You can only explore these things if you're kind of building from scratch. If you're buying stuff, it's more like defined work.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions, Alan, that obviously you know very well because you wrote a blog post on it, is how long does something take? And I really enjoyed reading what was initially like an internal culture page about estimations, and like how to talk about estimations, what estimations mean. But maybe it'd be good if you give people an overview of like your opinions on estimations and the classic question that engineers always get: how long is this going to take?
Yeah. Um, so it started out as it started out as a rant about Gantt charts, and that I think like Gantt charts are just terrible, and that they are a complete misrepresentation of the world. Um, and in the like, call it outside of the like Silicon Valley SaaS, there's this expectation that if you fail at estimates, like somehow you're like lazy or irresponsible, and there's some other group of people somewhere who could have tried harder and done a better job at this. And yet that has never ever worked out anywhere in any industry. Uh, everybody's familiar with, a house remodel or a kitchen remodel or something, and it never goes to plan. It's like these houses are all generally kind of the same. We're using the same materials and we're doing the same thing every time. And it still takes, twice as long, three times as long. Oh, the budget, we have to double the budget. And every non-technical person looking at software is like, oh, you can make this, you can do this accurately, precisely. Like, what evidence do you have for that? So then I started talking about the things that it is possible to know and the things that it's not possible to know. I mean, at this point, I'm just rehashing the blog post, but yeah, go read it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, we'll put it in the description because I think it's a very cool piece um, and somewhat controversial, but I really enjoyed it. On
Is it one
that
of those
point,
things
though,
where,
sorry, yeah,
sorry, is it one of those things where it's controversial that it's controversial? I think it's like,
but it's a
why
good
is it
one. It's like
controversial?
we need to
Yeah.
have this debate, otherwise people get the wrong idea on estimations.
Well, I mean, so the problem is everybody wants one.
Yeah,
Everybody wants an estimate, but okay, I want a pony, like somehow we have this expectation of like, oh, I want a pony is unreasonable, but I want to predict the future 6 months out is not.
yeah, for sure. How do you scale things though, from your perspective, Alan? How do you, obviously it's hard to give estimates that obviously they're never right. How do you scale engineering teams to meet this like constant demand of added work, bigger roadmap, more customer requests?
There are a couple of things. Um, so there's, you know, how do we go to market and like what do we tell customers and like what do we do there? And then the second part is how do we build things? Um, the first one is easier and less controversial. So let's start there. So as a company grows, the pressure to forward sell goes down, right? Because you're a startup, you've got one thing, and the biggest prospect you've ever talked to is like, "This is great, but I need this one more thing." And you're like, But then when you get to like, you know, Apple, you know what Apple's roadmap is next year, right? It's going to be a slightly thinner phone. It's going to be a laptop that's the same size and just a little bit faster, like you don't need to predict the future for that because like you know it's going to happen. And then somewhere between your startup and Apple, there's, a growth curve of like, okay, every single customer, we now build a thing that satisfies every single customer in market. So that the pressure on that just goes down over time, and that's great. So that naturally gets easier as you move out of the startup phase. Um, the other part about product is you want to build the smallest thing that could work. So if you say we're going to build this all singing, all dancing thing, and it's going to take a year, then people care a lot about, is it actually going to be a year or like 4 years? But if you say we're going to make the smallest possible experiment and we're going to release it next week, we're going to give it to, one beta customer and get their feedback, nobody cares if it's 5 days or 6 days, right? It's less time, it's less of a commitment, and you get the much faster feedback cycle. So it's partly the agile thing, but like, yeah, they're kind of missing. Agile mostly talks about project planning and not enough about the value of like, why do we want to get this into somebody's hands in a week?
Yeah, because often agile companies just work in 2 week sprint, but
Yeah.
have like a huge project. It's like a
Right.
5-year project split
Yeah.
into 2 weeks. And it's like, that's not the point.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So the point is you can't predict the future, and the farther out you go, the harder it is to predict. So if you just do something, in a day or a week, there are many fewer commitments. And the point is, you shouldn't actually have the hubris to say, I know what the customer is going to say about this prototype. Like, you actually need to react after it gets into customers' hands. And so this is one of the places where estimation goes wrong. They're kind of two separate problems. One is, how long will it take to deliver this piece of work? And the other is, I know what customers are going to say and do. And that is way, way harder. And there's way more hubris, because when you say like, I have a 6-month roadmap, I'm going to do pitch A and then I'm going to do piece of work A and piece of work B and piece of work C. Then you're saying, I know that customers are going to love every single thing we've released. They're going to have no notes, and we have completely and accurately predicted market demand. It's like, every one of those is wrong. So that's the other, like, even if you could accurately predict when your software is going to be released, you're also claiming I can predict how customers will react to it. And that is why you need to throw away your roadmap. So you just say, I'm going to release this thing in a week, and then we're going to see what happens. Maybe people love it, maybe they don't. And then we can reassess and make a decision about what to do next.
I guess that's the key point. Yeah, the pausing and reassessing, not the continuous, never ending.
Yeah, because I bet if you go back, you look at any of the team's roadmaps from a year ago, I bet they'll just be, most of them will be.
Every one of them's wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. Which makes it hard to put a public roadmap up, but we will.
Well,
do it.
yeah,
We'll
exactly.
get there. We'll get there. Obviously.
Some of the teams that you're predicting the roadmaps for, they don't exist. Like, might have a team.
Yeah. What would you say are the biggest challenges you faced, Alan, in like the last 6-7 years since you and David co-founded Griffin?
I mean, just the will to keep going. The first couple of years were pretty hard. Dealing with investors. To be clear, the pitching investors are people who have signed up with us, are great and believe in the vision. But Griffin is a very weird business, both from a VC perspective and from a banker perspective. So, I mean, we have to get props to David. He is one of the most determined entrepreneurs I've ever met. He has probably heard more no's than any founder you've ever met. And by no's, I mean like hundreds of VCs over over this entire stretch. So 8 years. You'd probably heard. Yeah. Anyway, so Griffin is a weird business because in general, VCs don't like regulation. One, they don't like regulation, and two, they don't understand banking. And then the bankers understand banking, but not technology and like why we're going to win and what the advantages actually are to what we're doing. So just surviving for the first 5 years was hard. These days, like for my day to day, the hard thing now is prioritization. Like there's an infinite number of things to do, and everybody wants something. And it's like what is the most important thing today, and which problem can be delayed, and which one has to be solved today.
What kept you going in those 5 years, Alan?
I don't know. Still believed in it. One of my favorite so David has this blog post with this list of rejections. One I think might not be on there, but my favorite is it takes you too long to get to market and you have no moat. Like, those are the same thing. So yeah, we have a huge moat now, and took a while to build it.
Sort of flipping Mo's question on its head. Well, over that course of 8 years, what's been the most rewarding thing?
Just seeing it work. Like the other day, I was doing getting ready for an investor call, and was going to do a penny test. So I got out my Monzo app and typed in the Griffin sort code and account number, and then said, Monzo said, "Oh, you're going to send £1 to this address. That's Griffin Bank," and got the green check mark. Like, yes, that's a real thing. That's our sort code. Sent the money, refreshed the page. Oh, yep, there's £1, like from Allen Rohner. It's like, wow. I know that's like the most basic flow we do, but it's like really cool to see, real money move.
Yeah, totally. Totally agree. I think there was one where one of our customers, they integrated with the sandbox in like a week, and then we took them live, and it's just worked. And I downloaded their app. I'm on it. I sign up for an account. I know I'm in our system, and and then I can see, hey, powered by Griffin Bank written down. And so, fully agree. It's really cool.
I think that one's yonder. I think we can mention it publicly. It's okay.
Oh, we can. Okay. Well, I didn't want to completely muck up the.
It's yonder, everyone. Sign up. They're great. Yeah. And what are you most excited about this year, Alan?
Getting things like stable, like from a like business perspective. Like I think our revenue is going to go up a lot, and then I think that means we will be in control of our own destiny in a way that we haven't been for the last 8 years. Yeah, we can probably like getting to profitability is great, not just because of money, but also because it means like we don't have to pitch investors anymore. Like that's huge.
Yeah, it's time, it's complexity, it's everything just reducing and being focused on building. Yeah, awesome. Final question from me. I know we're coming up to time. Any advice for founders? You've done this many times. You are a veteran in this space across continents. Any nuggets of wisdom?
The most useful skill in founding is self-awareness. It's like, where do I want to go? Where am I? What tools do I have available? And then, like, okay, at the end of the day, you did a bunch of work. What work did I do, and how did that lead to the goal? And it's amazing how many people don't do that, like, in their just adult lives. Like, where do I want to go? What did I do? I don't know, just so yeah, just constantly thinking about reassessing. Okay, how did I did a bunch of stuff today. How well did that go? Like, should it have gone better? Like, do I need to reassess? Like, it's that same constant reflection of where am I and where do I want to go.
Mm. Mm. That's super interesting. Yeah. I think we can probably leave it there. But yeah, thank you so much, Alan. That was super interesting to hear. And maybe we have you back at some point to talk about marketing because you're scary good at marketing. So that's a marketer. But yeah, really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.